When you're working with all these different companies, you're a keynote speaker, you meet all these different business leaders. When you're talking to business leaders that are trying to utilize new technology like AI, what do you find are some of the biggest challenges they're facing, and what advice do you give them?
I think, again, there is fear anytime there's something new. And I think for leaders, you're constantly managing. And as someone who's run companies in the past as well, whether they're mine or someone else's, I think that the constant challenge is how do you deal with the status quo? Right? Like you have employees, you have budgets, you have investors, you have to make money, you have to make your customers happy, you have to make your employees happy. That's a tall order for any organization, whether it's one person or 100,000 people. It doesn't really matter. Now you have this idea of having to look forward, and people think that new technology is something that we're only dealing with now. The reality is there has always been new technology. Even the fax machine in its day was new technology. I know some people don't know what that is. Look it up. But I think that what we need to do as leaders is look at, okay, how do I keep my business going? But then how do I make sure that it's still going to exist a year, two, 5, 10 down the line? And we have seen, and there's so many examples, of companies that have gone away that were huge. I always go back to because I was in the film industry, like Blockbuster and Netflix. I had a film on Netflix. I was one of the first independent filmmakers to have a film on Netflix on streaming back in, I want to say, 2010. And people told me I was crazy. They had bought 5,000 DVDs back in 2009. And then they were like, we're starting this streaming thing. And people were like, what are you wasting your time with? And so things are moving really fast. And if you are running any sort of organization today, you certainly cannot be only focused on the status quo. You have to look ahead and you have to figure out not just like, oh, how do I just bring AI? Like that is so amorphous. The question is, how do I reinvent my organization to meet the time? And what that means is basically is that AI, like the internet in its time, the internet is now used by every single organization, almost every single person on earth. AI is going to be the same thing. It's going to become almost like infrastructure, if you will, and it's just going to sit underneath everything. And so the question isn't, do I want to use it, or how do we want to use it, or let's slow down? The question should be, how do we integrate it? How do we look at our entire organization and figure out how to move into this transformational time? And we are already in it. So what I try to do is light a fire under people's, I'm trying to think of the right word, behinds, is that the proper word? So that they realize that the time is now and that you can't just sit around and wait for this thing to develop. It's here. It's not going anywhere. It is going to be one of the biggest changes in our lifetimes and for humanity ever.